John, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, do take a seat. John is going to be joining us now for our panel discussion. A very thought-provoking address, a lot for us to chew over there, and we're going to explore a lot of those themes now. Our thanks to PACT and TAC for sponsoring this debate. Is TV broken and how can we fix it? Please can I ask our other panellists to come up and join us on stage as well. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We have such a wealth of experience here on this panel. I wouldn't presume to pick out from the excellent and quite jaw-dropping CVs of the people we've got on this stage which are the relevant things that you need to know about them. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and perhaps pick out something that they think you need to know today. I'll just do the most basic of introductions. So you know John already. We've already heard him. Ed Sayer is the TV Whisperer. His blog is a must-read about the way that the television industry is changing, if you're not already familiar with it. In fact, we're going to, I think, basically, we've all read your blog this morning, Ed, and we're about to just regurgitate a lot of it, I suspect, today. Kate Beal is CEO of Woodcut Media. Kate, thank you so much for joining us. And Llyr Morus is TAC Chair and the Managing Director of Mojo Productions. Diolch for joining us, and croeso, you're all very welcome. So, Llyr, perhaps you'd like to start. Just a very quick introduction.
So I'm Llyr Morus. I am MD and producer at Cynrychiadau Mojo Productions, based in Cardiff and North Wales. We're a new production company and also the chair of TAC, so the voice of the independent television producers in Wales.
Diolch. And Kate?
So I'm Kate. I'm the CEO of Woodcut Media. We are a Hampshire-based production company, distribution company, and now publisher with our obsession with YouTube. We are a true indie. And according to Broadcast this year, we are the 8th largest indie in the nations and regions, which, to be honest, we're pretty proud of and quite stunned. We are B Corp certified, which is our biggest achievement, I'd say, in the last 2 years. It took us 18 months to get it, and we're very proud of that. And my current obsession is making the most of our assets, and that is all I think about, really, and think about how we stay in business in 5 years' time. So I look forward to being here and talking about this.
Well, I think we'll be excavating some of that in this debate, won't we, Ed?
Hi, so some of you might know that my background is a mix between production and commissioning. I used to head up original commissioning at Discovery, but I also write, as Felicity said, the TV Whisperer newsletter, where I try and demystify the inner workings of television so people can make the right choices.
Brilliant, thank you. And John, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything we need to know about you that you haven't already let us know in terms of introductions? Or do you feel you've done it already in the speech?
I've got a twin brother.
Well, identical?
Identical.
Well, I'm glad he isn't here to confuse us all on stage today then. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's dive right in then. And perhaps, Kate, we'll start with you on this front as someone who's been sort of thinking about these things as an indie for a long time. And we'll start with YouTube, which is the behemoth, really, isn't it? That's sort of rolling over so much of the landscape at the moment. How do we, as workers in the industry, start to find an accommodation with YouTube? How do we start to use it in a way to benefit us? How do we deal with the economics of it? Just what are your thoughts on all of that?
It's a huge thing. So we started our YouTube project in December last year, and it was after a lot of thought and a lot of listening, a lot of reading about the way the industry is changing, and that thinking of, right, how do we stay relevant, how do we pioneer, how do we stay in business. And we're also very fortunate, because of PAC's good work with terms of trade, we own our IP, and that is actually crucial as a producer in the YouTube world. So there's sort of, I kind of class it as 3 types of YouTube creator now. You've got the sort of the true creators who perhaps start in their bedroom, and the influencers, and what you sort of see as the, you know, the sideman, that kind of person. And then you have the big, the big companies like SLC or ITV or even Banijay who have their own channels. And then you have people like us going, hang on, let's give this a go. So for us, it's been very much a venture of into the unknown, but knowing that this feels like the right thing to do. I'm watching YouTube. My husband's continually on YouTube, and my children are. So clearly, this is what we need to be doing, and it's another way of spreading our content and making content and using the assets that we have. The economics are tricky. It does cost money if you actually have a production company. If you're not that person in a bedroom who can do it kind of on the side, it costs money. You have to put thought and love into your content in the way that you do in television, traditional television. It's a journey. I can go on, but I will let other people talk. But it's something we're pretty passionate about.
Llyr, what's your take on it then? Because obviously, you've, as you said, you've just started Mojo, and where are you on navigating YouTube at the moment? Whereas Kate says the audiences are migrating, younger audiences especially. How is Mojo approaching all of this?
It's an interesting one because when we were talking of setting up a company, probably we were coming into it with that sort of linear sort of commissioning thought process. And then one of our first commissions has been doing the first vertical drama for S4C for TikTok, which threw us into a whole new way of working from the off. So I think with broadcasters, we have to go on that journey with them and embrace the fact that digital is the way forward, but then we've got to also be mindful of the impact that has on the success and so safeguarding the future of companies to make sure that we're making good quality content that can stand out, but that is not just driving all the costs down and that we endanger the amazing indie sector that we have in Wales and in the UK. The tariffs and sort of pushing departments within production out of the picture because we can't afford to have them. So we have to go on that digital journey, but we have to also safeguard the future of the sector as well.
It's interesting, Ed, isn't it, that these days a lot of YouTube content is actually consumed on TV, yet we have TV production companies and TV broadcasters subject to very different rules and regulations compared to YouTube and YouTube content creators. That's something that you're very concerned about and you'd like to see change.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this part of the argument. And I think, YouTube presents fantastic opportunities for content creators, as we all know. It's kind of democratized production because of the disruption to the distribution model that anyone can enter it. And as you quite rightly say, that YouTube at home is primarily consumed on your TV screen, but it doesn't have the same regulations as other broadcasters. My argument is, if it looks like TV, smells like TV, it is TV. And I think their argument of going, oh, we're just publishers, we don't need all this regulation, we're just a platform, it doesn't hold true. And the consequences of a lack of regulation means that the content that's produced and sits on that channel is different. We all know that it's exciting, it's edgy, it's dangerous. And that's why young people love to consume it, because it feels different to television. And the reason it feels different to television is because in our industry, we are constrained by regulation, and quite rightly so. We have watersheds, we have to be responsible, we have to look after our production staff. So my call would be, we need the governments to regulate YouTube and the other digital platforms, but also at the same time, I think we'll get to this later, deregulate some of the areas of television. And then you've got an equal playing field, a level playing field, where content can then battle it out properly. But at the moment, the tables are massively tilted, I believe, against traditional television, and we're losing.
John, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think there's a number of challenges to what Ed says. One, you're not going to regulate big American media platforms. If you regulate YouTube, you regulate them all. So the government is not going to do that. There's someone called Mr. Trump in the White House. We're trying to do a trade deal with America. You've seen the pushback around European and UK legislation on American companies. I think the last thing Number 10 will ever consider is regulating American platforms and as they're trying to get a trade deal with Mr. Trump. So I think Ed's got an interesting point, though. PSBs are PSBs because they are safe. They are. You can guarantee when you switch a telly on, you watch a British PSB, it's safe content. It's got due diligence. We all know the standards they have to meet. I think that's a good thing. I think in a world of craziness, a world of false, fake, and AI-generated falsehoods, having our core PSBs as beacons of truth and fairness, I think, is a good thing. So I'd be worried if we actually wanted to move away from that. I think it's actually a USP for the future, that it's somewhere safe we can all go. So
trust is a hook to hang.
Trust, I think, is a big thing. The world is going to get even more crazier with AI. We've just seen stuff in the press this morning about a new platform by ChatGPT, which can produce any character you want. It's already breached people's copyright. You can get Mario to actually, make a fake video for you. So who's making that? Who are the agents that are making it? Are they bad actors? So I think I don't want to weaken the importance of PSBs. So I don't want to create a level playing field between the crazy digital world and our core high quality, and to your earlier point, well paid and properly funded British content delivered to our citizens in a safe way. I think that's not the way to do it. In terms of use YouTube, use all the digital platforms, get side hustles, do what Kate's doing. Over the past few years, we've seen British indie digital production revenues go from 50 million to 250 million.
Well, that's incredible.
But it's 250 million out of 3.6 billion. It's not the cavalry coming over the hill to save us anytime soon. But it's marginal, it's incremental. Do it, see what you can do and learn and what you can generate from it. But I don't think it's going to replace, to my earlier comments, the core of high quality British content.
Okay, well, let's talk maybe about how indies can try to broaden their approach and seek some additional revenues. Kate, you're keen to come in.
I think just, to come on to the trust issue, and actually this isn't just in YouTube, but this is globally. As British programme makers, we have this level of trust across the world, which when John earlier said in his speech about our North American revenues going up, it's because we're British programme makers and we work with PSBs, but we also work with Ofcom, and not many countries in the world have something as rigid, in a good way, as Ofcom. So all of our programme making adheres to those standards, whether you know it or not. So whether you deregulate YouTube, there are digital producers in the audience, and then there's one, sorry, Christy, I'm going to pick on you, Crash. He is a pioneering digital producer, yet I know instinctively he will work under Ofcom guidelines, even if he's doing it overtly or not, even if it's for a branded content piece, he's still working to the Ofcom code, because that's intrinsically in us all. And the channels that we've launched, although we don't have to regulate in the same way, we do self-regulate, so you hope that people find you as a platform of quality and trust and authority in some ways, and that's because of our British heritage.
And you've gone, I don't know if niche is the right word, but focused. You've gone very focused in terms of the content that you're providing.
Yeah, YouTube is about niche, and it is about, we started in a little bit scattergun last December, and we've kind of become even more focused, and we've now got a very true crime channel. We've got an underworld channel, which is just gangsters. We've got a history channel, and that works because that works in the world of YouTube. And to John's point about, is this the saviour? It's not the saviour, but I don't think it's quite as small as you are saying it is. Although at the moment, yes, we're only making 250 million, I think it's going to increase quite rapidly. You know, I'm not making, as a company, all we're doing at the moment is we're investing. We're producing 3 to 4 documentaries every week, and we as Woodcut are paying for them. There's no broadcaster alliance here. We're doing it all ourselves. And the reason we're doing this is, you know, we're losing money this year, and I'm very open about the fact we're losing money this year. But in 5 years, we'll be making money. So I think the swing will come over the next few years.
And Llyr, what about you and Mojo? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, so, you know, as Kate was saying, she's got IP that she can make use of, and so and as a new company, that is not something that we have. But I think we need to look at the opportunities as well and see that, you know, development used to be something that happened in a room, and then you'd feel the point that you'd take it to a commissioner, where now you can develop, make content, put it out there, and get immediate response from the audience, which then, when you go in and see a commissioner, can strengthen your argument to have a commission, because you've already proven that, you know, there is a need out there, the audience want what you're making.
Is there an issue around the size of indies? Ed, perhaps you could comment on this. You know, you've talked about playing fields and how level they are or aren't already. Within the sector itself, is it trickier for smaller indies to compete with the bigger ones who perhaps have bigger development budgets in providing this additional content? Or can the smaller ones be a bit more nimble and a bit more reactive to what appears to be popular with audiences on YouTube and other social media, for example?
Well, it's a really good question, because I think yes and no is the answer to it. I think that you know, the way to make money in this new world is to have a diversified product that will sit across many different platforms, not just television or just YouTube. Every single income stream is important to a piece of IP. But to your point on what's going to happen to production teams, I believe that they're going to get smaller and more multi-skilled as we go on. And I think, to Garant's point earlier, that the broadcasters, production partners, everyone, we're going to have to work together. And I think that is another change that I think producers inherently find quite difficult. I think everyone feels like we're in competition with each other. You know, we've all been to the bar and gone, oh yes, I've won a commission, how are you getting on? And I think actually now that the new world is like, I'm going to be talking to Kate and go, hey, look, I've got this thing. Should we club together? And I think it's about partnerships and new models of working, which is really, really important for everyone to survive, because there's no two ways about it. There are, you know, the big players. Consolidation has been going on for a number of years, which produces these titanic companies like Banerjee, you know, who can throw a lot of cash and people at a product and give broadcasters a lot of security. And so when you've got tiny, you know, my production company, Legend, you know, which is just 2 people, you know, it's really hard to then compete against the bigger companies. And so you just need to find different ways of moving forward.
And what's your take on that collaboration, John? Because obviously with PACT, that's, you know, something that you advocate anyway, and you can demonstrate the results with things like IP and all of that. How should that collaborative approach be taken forward, do you think, while still obviously being able to maintain these indies as discrete competing businesses?
No, I think Ed's right, and I think it's going to become more important when we get sort of new members that join PACT, and they always say, oh, I'm going to get that slot of Banerjee. I go, well, good luck with that, to Ed's point. They're not going to give up that slot easily. They'll throw money to keep their share. Why not partner up with them or partner up with someone else? Try and assemble the best team you possibly can. And I think we will see more of that as people bring different strengths and different IP. Then I think that'd be a good thing. I think seeing, I wouldn't say cooperatives, but people basically coming together to see an opportunity and then play to each other's strengths, I think is a smart strategy. Because, now, of course, will the money pay for it? Will the margins be able to sustain that? we'll have to see. But I think going forward, it is a good strategy. I've seen some of it before in the past. It didn't go very well. But we're in a different world now. We're in a very different environment. And maybe that will be the catalyst for new approaches and new relationships.
I think COVID changed things, actually, because I am hugely competitive. I'm very entrepreneurial. I will, I've run my own business for a long time. But during COVID was the first time I started being nice to other indies. I'd see them in a bar and I'd be like, right, I'm doing amazingly. But now it's almost like there's an indie help club, actually, especially the true indies. We are very much more collegiate. There are ways of, well, can we cooperate, or sharing intel even, and things we'd never have done before that. And I think there was quite a sea change, as well as the structural change. I think COVID shook us so much, we realised it's good to talk. It's nice, because it's lonely otherwise.
I mean, I have to say, so I have just finished a project with History Channel, and it was brilliant. They collaborated in a completely new way, not only in the right situation, but in production. And so I think there is change. I think that the broadcasters and the channels, they do know that they need to work differently, because at the end of the day, they can't afford it as well. That's the other thing, that they're just not making the revenues that they used to make. And so what that means is that producers start having to shoulder more of the risks. And so if you're shouldering more of the risks, then you're going to want to take more of the rights. That's how it works. And so any broadcaster that's still kind of, Billy Big Bollocks, kind of, well, if you want to work with me, I take everything. Well, don't work with them. That's what I would say. Don't work with them. Work with the companies that are willing to share and collaborate, because that's definitely the way forward for everyone.
John.
Yeah, I think we were talking about indies working together, but I think we need a complete change within UK commissioning. I think, to Ed's point, we've got to recognise the risk. I mean, most indies here, if they get a commission from our broadcaster, could be shouldering anywhere up to 70% of deficit to get the show made. So actually, we're the majority funder, we're the majority investor in the content, not the broadcaster.
Exactly, yeah.
So they should be a lot more sensitive to that, because most of that risk that we take is debt. When a commissioner says, oh, go and get some distribution money, they think it's free money. It's not. It has to be recouped before you even go into net profit. Now, prior to the pandemic, you could probably recoup on most shows 6 to 12 months. It's now looking like 2 to 3 years before distributors will recoup, which means there's less money, it's higher risk, and your back end doesn't appear for maybe 3 to 4 years. So they should recognise that we are willing as indies, we are willing as a creative community to take on risk, but they need to change how they think about that as well, to Ed's point. And it's not just with, say, American networks. I think it's a really important thing for British commissioners, whoever they are, for whatever broadcaster, to be a bit more cognizant of that and a bit more understanding of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I'd like, one more point, is that as production companies, as production budgets fall, that, the way production companies used to make a little bit of a profit was your production fee, your 10%. Now, if you're making something for, 20,000, 10% of 20,000 is nothing compared to the old days of 20% of 100,000. And I still think that a lot of commissioners and channels think that 10% is some kind of slush fund, and that, well, if you go over budget, just take it out of your production fee. And actually, the production fee is there to pay the rent, pay the accountants, pay the lawyers, do all those things. And they've got no idea of what it actually takes to run a production company. And that 10% is sacrosanct. So if anything, I think as budgets fall, then that 10% should rise to, say, 20%, and that should become the new norm.
And as we were saying, the deficit funding and stuff, and it's now becoming much harder to get. I think we need to come back together as an industry, because when we had COVID, after COVID, there was such a busy period. rates, prices, everything inflated. And we've stayed at that level, but the funding available to make programs hasn't kept up with that. So we need to all come back and sit around the table and look at the rates and stuff and say, if we want this industry to survive, we have to work together to reset the clock in a way, because we can't carry on with those kind of levels that we've seen.
I do agree the rates are high for production, but equally I think the risk is high for the freelancers, and this is really borne out over the last 2 years where there's a dearth of work. Personally, I do think that we've tipped too far into a freelancer world, and I think, again, this is structural change, and this would be with broadcast consent and cooperation, but I think we need more PAYE. I think we need people to come on staff more. I think people need more security. Then you can lower the rates a little bit, because they won't be working 1 day a week, they'll be working 5 days a week. And I think there's a whole economic shift that needs to happen in order to bring the budgets down. But in order to bring the budgets down, we need a kind of guarantee longevity of work, and people need to be on PAYE, because that's the only way you can do it, and especially in the regions and the nations. As a regional company, we have a really high proportion of PAYE people because we need to retain the talent, because there's nowhere else for them to work. And so therefore, we as an indie take that risk of having such a large PAYE pay bill at the end of the
And
month.
on that, because you brought us on, I was about to bring us on to workforce issues, so you've done that for me really organically, so thank you, that's fantastic. But when you're in a lumpy industry, where there's lots of work, then maybe there's less, then there's a lot, that sort of thing, how do you flatten that out with your permanent staff then? How do you deploy them in the more fallow periods? How does that work for you economically?
Well, economically, first of all, it starts with me running around the whole world trying to get as much work in as we can. And so that is, the idea is that we don't have fallow. But when we do, there's the production fee that Ed talked about is deployed, or most importantly, the rights that we keep as part of terms of trade, so the royalties that we get are used. And then, as a company, as Woodcut, we have chosen to reinvest and therefore do things like YouTube or invest in other developments. It's hard, and it's, traditionally in the past 10, 15 years, it's, end of the project, the freelancer goes, but that's really hard to do in the nations and regions. You don't want your freelancer to go, because your company is all about talent, and your reputation is all about the talent within the company. And if you lose that talent and they go somewhere else, or they go and have to work as an Amazon driver because they can't get work, that's not helping anyone. That's not helping the global industry or the British industry or your regional or nation,
Sure, yeah. And freelancer cost is high, Llyr, isn't it, too? So, I guess you make some gains there in that you don't have such high freelancer costs. But how are you addressing that balance between PAYE versus freelance and so on?
Being a brand new indie is a very different ballgame to somebody who's been but being in companies before. It's during that downtime as well that the valuable development work and stuff happens, where if you haven't got those teams sitting around in downtimes, then it's hard to come up with the new ideas and keeping the company going. So I agree with you that that we need to look at the balance between freelance and PAYE really to help.
Just very quickly, I think the reality is most indies don't make a lot of money. And I think that is a perhaps myth that we need to dispel, that we're rolling in it. We just about balance the books every month and keep going, because you love the art and you love the content.
I think Kate's strategy works for where Kate is. The problem we have, we do all the union agreements as PACT, and as some of the broadcasters have their own agreements. All of the unions are looking for above inflation pay increases right now. All of them. It's unsustainable. We don't have a labour market, because in a labour market, prices go up and down. They don't. They only go up. And that's a problem, because if you were wanting to take someone on staff as a talented freelancer who might help you get a show away, it's going to be really hard, because right over the horizon there's a bigger paycheck for someone else, maybe with a streamer commission. So it's very hard, because they're going, well, wait a minute, I'm an electrician, I can earn 100 grand a year working on Netflix shows, pay me 100 grand a year and I'll work on your show. your company. That's a big problem. And I think we've got to a point of hyperinflation in our labour market where we're seeing far too many shows. Domestic scripted is in crisis. Early in the year, we tracked 20 domestic dramas that had been greenlit but couldn't close their finance. And that's why we're working with drama producers to try and see if we can get an enhanced tax credit from the government, because closing finance is when people don't work. No one works if you can't close the finance. And the longer it takes, the worse it gets, because costs go up more. So the budget you had 2 years ago, 2 years from now, it's going to cost you even more. So we need to find a way to navigate that, and whether it's getting people on staff through more secured commissioning from broadcasters to try and get costs down, or finding a new settlement with the unions to recognise that domestic production isn't the same as a big inward investment show.
And of course, the roles of the workforce too are going to be changing radically, Ed, aren't they, in terms of what they bring to the party?
So just listening to all this conversation, look, I think that people have got to come to terms with the economics of content. The cost of production is falling and will continue to fall with the advent of technology. And it's no good I want to earn. So in the old days, I was earning a huge salary. Those salaries just don't exist anymore. So there's no point me going around saying I'm worth this, because I'm not. And I think that everyone needs to readjust and realise that the industry is just going to pay you less. And I think that once you come to those terms and that understanding, then you can make the decision, do I want to continue in this industry or do I want to go elsewhere?
And if you do want to continue, I mean, what is your advice to the workforce in terms of how AI, for example, in terms of what AI will be able to do, we were talking about it in the green room a little earlier. It is phenomenal, isn't it? And it does change the roles, really, the accepted and settled roles of decades. So what does that mean for members of the workforce who have to adapt to all of that?
So I do a lot of work with the National Film and Television School, and I do some tutoring there. And I also hear a lot of people going, it's really unfair. Are we setting up these students to fail? And it's kind of like, no. The industry is only going to keep on growing, but it's not going to be the industry that we're all working in now. And those young, talented people coming out of film schools, they are going to be multi-skilled. So if your skill is just being a focus puller, well, I'm afraid you've had it. But if you know how to edit and to script and how to prompt for AI and how to operate a camera, and you can do all these things, those are what the future creators are going to be doing. And you can see that now on YouTube, that these really talented young people coming through that manage the entire production workflow. And that's what's going to happen with us. So this kind of siloed, this is how we've always done it and I'm worth this, it just is not going to exist anymore.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. Can I get thoughts from you, picking up a little bit on what John was saying earlier about the broadcasters themselves, what they can do, what extra support they may or may not need, what you would like to see from them. Llyr, perhaps you'd like to kick us off there.
I think one of the issues we see is, the streamers are coming in and it's great, they're bringing a lot of work, but you have your various bands of shows, and then the freelance workforce then come to you regardless of what band you're working with, that's my rate. And then, and in fairness, you don't bring a lesser standard of work to you because you're being paid less, but they then have an expectation of this is what my rate is. And when you're working for a PSB, you don't get to those higher bands, which means you can't afford the rate that people are asking for. So I think we need to work with the PSBs and the sector together to have more realistic expectation. And if that's what the budget the PSB has to to pay for that programme, that should be the level of programme they're willing to accept. Not saying, we'll give you that much, but we're expecting you to actually deliver a programme that's worth 3 times as much and pass the problem on to funding it to anybody else, like John was saying.
Kate, do you want...
Okay, I think for me, I am the #1 fan of the PSBs in the UK. I think they are the core of our programme making industry and our talent and our creativity and our democracy, because we need our PSBs for democracy. So these should be guarded and protected at all costs. However, they should equally work with us and do it together. It's not us and them, it's us together. And I think in some ways the PSBs need to see the indie sector as an absolute part of them, because without the indies, there is no amazing programming to give to the UK, but also to give to the world. So I think for the next few years, there's going to be difficult decisions, difficult conversations, but I think we can't be us and them about it. We have to do this together, and that's the only way we're going to get through.
Okay, thank you. We've got about 2 minutes left, guys. John, I know that you want to comment on the role of the PSBs. Could you also combine that in a really pithy way with your thoughts on, is TV broken? Can we fix it?
I don't think it's broken yet. I think we're going through fundamental change. I think we've got to, what I was alluding to in my speech and what we will be trying to get a debate about is, where are we going? How much money have we got? How much money can we raise, and what are we going to spend it on, and what does that mean? It can't just be indies or the bank of deficit. Yeah, that's not sustainable. Something I've been calling for a while now, and I've yet to land it, is I'd like the broadcasters, the PSBs, collectively to publish an annual future spending plan by hours. So an aggregated total number of hours on all the genres, so that indies and freelancers, because I met too many people who were working in unscripted in Edinburgh who were freelancers, who hadn't worked for a year. They were all thinking that type of programming is going to come back. It's not. It'd be much better as an industry if we could say, this is the future spending on lifestyle, daytime, whatever it is, over the next 3 years, collectively, so we know how many hours we're pitching for.
Okay.
So where it might have been 2,000 hours on unscripted, it's now only 200. Well, it'd be quite good to know that.
Great. So. Thank you all so much. Ed, I'm going to give you 20 seconds to sum all of this up for us. TV broken, can we fix it?
Yes and yes. And I think the way to fix it is what we've all been saying, is more transparency from the broadcasters about how they make their money, how much money, and more understanding about how much risk that producers are taking on.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was absolutely fascinating. I know we could have kept going for another hour at least, couldn't we? Thank you all for sharing your thoughts and experience with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give my panel a big hand. Thank you.